It's just this universally frustrating phenomenon. You decide, tomorrow, I'm going to wake up 30 minutes early to work out. Or like, I'm going to finally read that book instead of watching TV. And suddenly the entire universe just declares war on you.
Oh, yeah. The alarm mysteriously fails. Or your lower back aches. Or, an unexpected email demands your immediate attention before you've even had your coffee.
Right. It feels like your brain's security system goes into full lockdown to prevent you from doing this one beneficial thing. But then, on the flip side, you decide to indulge in a genuinely terrible habit.
The ones you really shouldn't be doing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You know the drill. Doom scrolling at 2 a.m. or eating a giant pile of junk food that you know for a fact is going to make you physically miserable the next day.
And in that scenario, the universe is suddenly your best friend.
It is. Your brain literally rolls out the red carpet. It opens up this VIP fast lane. There are zero obstacles, just smooth sailing all the way down into terrible choices. Self-sabotage feels completely laughably effortless.
Yeah, I mean, it is the absolute definition of a psychologically rigged game.
Yeah.
We are just constantly fighting our own internal architecture.
And that rigged game is exactly what we are dedicating today's deep dive to unpacking. Because we are looking at this deeply insightful lecture produced by Buddhist Practice Incorporated out of Australia.
It's a really fascinating piece of source material.
It really is. It features the teachings of a highly regarded speaker, consultant Benny, alongside some incredibly sharp, really probing questions from a seeker of Buddhist teachings named Venerable Ivy.
And I think it's worth noting the production team behind this record, too.
Oh, definitely. The team at Notebook Dame and Dawn, they outwardly sent these notes over to us with this whole string of flag and flower emojis, just practically begging for a rigorous, authentic breakdown of the text.
Which is exactly what we're going to do.
Right. So our mission today is to map out the exact psychological obstacles that are blocking our growth and finally reveal the source calls it a seed, that can reverse this entire dynamic.
Yeah, the source material provides this incredible roadmap to get there. But to understand it, we really have to look closely at this concept of a karmic obstacle.
Okay, let's unpack that.
Because consultant Benny's definition is extremely grounded. It's that exact experience we just described. Trying to do good and hitting a brick wall while doing bad is this effortless, one pass, all pass experience. The resistance is just zero.
But before we go deeper into the text, we should probably clarify what karma actually means in this specific psychological context.
That's a good point.
Because people usually hear that word and they think of, a mystical ledger in the sky tallying up points.
Right, and that is a crucial distinction to make. In this framework, karma is not mystical fate. It is a literal psychological law of cause and effect.
So not magic, just mechanics.
Exactly. Every action you take and every thought you dwell on carves a physical groove into your neural pathways. Think of it like water running down a hillside.
Oh, I like that analogy.
Yeah, the more the water flows down a specific path, the deeper the trench becomes and the harder it is for the water to flow anywhere else.
So a karmic obstacle is essentially a trench of bad habits that we've dug so deeply over time that trying to climb out feels completely impossible.
Precisely. And as the material categorizes these obstacles, it brings us down to a foundational level known in Buddhist thought as the three poisons.
Which are greed, anger, and ignorance, right?
Right. But Benny does something very interesting here. He doesn't treat these as moral failings to feel guilty about. He compares them functionally to drug addiction.
Okay, I have to push back on that comparison a bit.
Go for it.
Because, eating a piece of chocolate cake when I'm on a diet or mentally cursing out a driver who just cut me off in traffic, that is not the same as doing hard drugs.
Sure, it sounds extreme.
It does. Labeling everyday frustrations as an addiction feels a little heavy-handed, almost like a scare tactic.
It is entirely natural to feel defensive about that label. But if we look at the underlying psychology, the source isn't moralizing. Consultant Benny is describing a literal mechanism in your brain.
I'm just trying to see the parallel, like who is actively addicted to being angry?
Well, think about the last time you were truly furious at someone. Maybe a coworker who undermined you or something.
Oh, I can definitely picture that.
Right, so in that moment, your brain is flooded with a chemical rush. It creates this intoxicating sense of power, control, and absolute righteousness. You say to yourself, I am right, they are horribly wrong.
Yeah, you get that feeling of pure justification.
Exactly. You chew on that anger, you replay the scenario in the shower, and every single time you replay it, you get another little hit of that self-righteous dopamine.
Wow. Okay, that is deeply uncomfortable to admit, but it makes total sense. We literally get high on our own negative emotion.
We do. When you obsess over how someone wronged you, you are actively deepening that neural trench. The source makes the point that someone using drugs might initially feel a fleeting high. They feel powerful or numb, but the inevitable end result is total physical and mental bankruptcy.
So whether it's a chemical substance or a toxic mindset like chronic anger, the mechanism is identical. It always starts with a buzz and ends in bankruptcy.
Right.
We are basically engaging in low-level chemical self-sabotage every time we indulge a grudge.
It erodes your rationality until it consumes you. It's not about the piece of cake or the swear word. It's about the neural groove of addiction you're carving into your own mind.
Okay, but if that neural groove of addiction is what happens with our everyday small-scale frustrations, I'm a bit terrified to think about what happens when we scale that up.
Yeah, the lecture does move into much darker territory next. It discusses the fifth and most severe level of obstacles, known as the 5 heinous crimes.
These are the really extreme ones, right?
Yes. These include extreme destructive acts, such as harming one's own parents. Actions that, according to the text, plunge a person into the deepest suffering imaginable.
But the underlying logic Benny highlights here isn't solely about the physical act of those crimes, is it? He points to something much more insidious at the core of human nature.
He does. The ultimate evil being described here isn't just violence. It is the concept of ingratitude, specifically the act of returning kindness with enmity.
Wow, returning kindness with enmity.
Yeah, it is taking the very source of your life and nourishment and attacking it.
Okay, but that brings up a massive question for the listener, because most of us are not out there committing heinous crimes. So how does this extreme concept of ingratitude apply to our daily lives?
Well, it connects to a crucial concept in the material called the field of merit.
The field of merit.
Yes. From a cause and effect perspective, your life, your survival resources, and even your wisdom are not generated in a vacuum. You are not an isolated island. Everything you have comes from the outside, from things that nourish you.
And Venerable Ivy asks such a relatable question in the lecture at this exact point. She asks, what if the person who helps me isn't a parent or a monk or a sacred religious figure?
Right, what if they're just normal people?
Exactly. What if they're just a regular person, like a barista or a stranger holding a door? Are they still my field of merit?
And Benny's answer is a definitive yes. Anyone who has ever nourished you in any way is your field of merit.
But the text takes it even further into the bodhisattva perspective, claiming that all sentient beings are your field of merit. And I really struggle with that.
It's a tough pill to swallow.
It is, like, even the jerk in traffic, even the backstabbing coworker who steals credit for my project, how are they nourishing me? They are actively making my life worse.
That is the instinctual defensive response, for sure. But we have to look at how growth actually happens. Without friction, you cannot build spiritual or psychological muscle.
So they're like resistance training.
Exactly. If a person's goal is to cultivate boundless patience and compassion, how can they practice that without difficult people? The difficult people provide the necessary environment for wisdom to actually bloom.
Okay, I think I can translate this into a visual. It's like an ecosystem.
Okay, let's hear it.
You look at a beautiful blooming orchid in a forest and you think, that's the valuable part. That's the only thing that matters. But you can't just value the orchid and hate the mud.
Right, because the orchid needs the mud.
Exactly. You can't hate the rotting leaves or the annoying bugs crawling around in the dirt. The mud, the rot, and the bugs are the exact elements maintaining the soil's fertility.
Right.
Without them, the orchid dies. So the annoying coworker is essentially...
The rotting leaves.
Yes, the rotting leaves.
That is a perfect analogy. Enlightened teachings might guide you, but the difficult, messy, everyday people provide the friction required for you to grow strong.
That makes a lot of sense.
So when you show ingratitude, when you return kindness or even friction with enmity, you aren't demonstrating power. You are literally pouring herbicide onto your own soil. You sever your own roots.
You destroy your own future potential by poisoning the very environment that feeds you. It's incredibly logical, but it creates a paradox.
What do you mean?
If preserving our soil and being grateful is the logical way to thrive, why do we constantly ruin our own lives with these toxic choices?
Oh, well, that is because our built-in navigation system is actively lying to us. This brings us to the 6th and 7th obstacles outlined in the text, which are our 6 senses.
Our eyes, ears, taste, touch, and so on.
Yes. Our sensory inputs are constantly tricking us. We are biologically wired to seek out highly stimulating things, and our senses convince us that this intense stimulation is the definition of true happiness.
Oh, it reminds me of the infinite scroll algorithm on social media. It gives you a 1-second hit of dopamine, fooling your senses into thinking you are engaged and happy, while actively draining your mental battery over hours, leaving you exhausted and anxious.
That modern equivalent is exactly what the lecture describes. It's like trying to put out a fire by pouring gasoline on it. And to protect us from this exact sensory trap, religious and philosophical traditions have historically created rules, which this text calls shielding precepts.
You know, the concept of shielding precepts caused a massive perspective shift for me.
Really? How so?
Well, I always assumed religious rules like monks taking a vow not to drink alcohol were entirely about personal moral superiority. I thought the monk was saying, I am keeping myself pure, I am staying away from the dirty things of the world. It always felt like a slightly selfish pursuit of personal holiness.
Yeah, that is a very common assumption. But Benny reveals a profound societal insight here. The rules aren't actually about the monk's personal purity. They are designed for shielding others.
Explain how that works, because the shift from selfish purity to societal protection is just fascinating.
Okay, imagine a monk decides to drink alcohol. The alcohol itself isn't the core issue. The issue is that the monk gets drunk, loses control, and ends up stumbling around the street acting foolishly.
Right.
Now, imagine ignorant people on the street seeing this. They don't understand the religion, they already harbor prejudices, and now they see this monk behaving terribly. They will naturally point, laugh, mock the monk, and slander the entire belief system.
Oh, wow. And by doing that, those people on the street are generating terrible destructive karma for themselves. They are carving a neural trench of arrogance and ignorance.
Exactly. The monk refrains from drinking not to feel superior, but so they do not become the excuse for someone else to make a terrible mistake.
Huh.
It is an act of profound, radical empathy.
That is beautiful.
The monk is essentially saying, I will restrict my own sensory desires so that you don't accidentally harm yourself by mocking me.
It's radical responsibility for how your actions impact the spiritual ecosystem of everyone around you. But consultant Benny attaches a very stern warning to this regarding how we interact with these rules.
He warns that we cannot let our arrogance trick us into blindly testing the core rules of life.
And the analogies used in the source are so vivid, it compares our arrogant curiosity to a person dying of thirst in a desert.
Yes, the mirage analogy.
Right. The experience guide says, stay on the path, but the dying person sees a mirage of water in the distance. They ignore the guide, run off the path to test if it's real, and they die in the sand.
Because their senses lied to them.
Exactly. Or it's like a toddler crawling up to the edge of a cliff thinking, I just want to see how deep it is. Or someone looking at a high voltage wire and thinking, I just want to touch it once to see what happens.
You cannot just try it once. Some rules exist because the consequence of breaking them is absolute destruction. When you don't know the truth, your only safe option is to trust the guidance of those who do, rather than relying on your own blind, arrogant confidence.
But when we ignore those warnings and follow our lying senses right off the edge of that cliff, where do we end up? We don't just hit the ground and move on. We end up tangled in situations we can't seem to escape.
The lecture describes the destination of that fall as the 8 hardships. And Benny isn't talking about abstract, mystical realms of punishment here. He brings it right down to our daily reality.
So what are they?
These hardships are the literal, agonizing hurdles in your life right now. The problems you can't solve, the modern anxiety keeping you awake at night.
And these hardships are caused by what the text calls the 9 knots.
Yes, these knots are deep, dead-end bindings. It's when you are hopelessly tied to junk media or trapped in a toxic relationship or consumed by an obsessive hatred for someone.
The mechanism of how a knot forms is what I find so fascinating. It relies entirely on a cognitive dissonance.
Absolutely.
Like, you know, staring at a screen until 3 a.m. is destroying your health, but you still desire the distraction. You fight the habit with mere willpower while still wanting the dopamine hit, and that internal struggle just pulls the binding tighter. You lose your freedom and become a marionette controlled by the knot.
And this leads to a chilling psychological reality presented in the text. When we are bound by these knots, we don't fight back. We don't scream for help. Instead, we act like loyal subjects to our own suffering.
Wow. We treat our toxic habits and our destructive grudges with the reverence of a loyal servant to a king.
Precisely.
If I translate this into my own life, When I'm consumed by professional jealousy or when I'm greedy for validation, I don't hit the brakes. I become an accomplice. I suffer from a kind of spiritual Stockholm
You
syndrome.
start defending your captor.
I totally make excuses. I say, well, they started the argument, so I have a right to be furious for 3 days. Or, like, I worked really hard today. I am stressed, so I deserve to stay up and eat this garbage.
Right, the justification.
Yeah, I take my most precious resources, my time, my emotional energy, my focus, and I willingly feed them to the exact monster that is destroying my life.
You are actively fortifying the knot. Every time you make an excuse, you pull the binding tighter and deepen the trench.
Okay, so we are well and truly stuck. We are chemically addicted to our own anger. We are pouring herbicide on our own soil with our ingratitude, and we are loyally, willingly feeding our own toxic habits.
The VIP lane to ruin is wide open.
It is wide open. So how on earth do we break this deadlock?
Well, this is where Venerable Ivy's contribution to the text is so vital. She had to dig deep through the teachings to find the ultimate seed of good habits, the one mechanism that can break this cycle.
She had to dig for it.
Yeah, she had to dig for it because consultant Benny is usually very hesitant to teach it publicly.
Oh, let me guess why he hides it. The cure involves the concept of an offering, right?
It does.
If a teacher stands on a stage and tells an audience, you need to make offerings, the modern listener's red flag is going to shoot up immediately. The audience will assume it's a financial scam, like a dressed-up word for a cash grab.
That is the exact cynical reaction Benny anticipates. He understands human nature. He knows our egos are massive and defensive. If he preaches offerings, people will put up walls, assume they're being scammed, and likely slander the teacher.
Which connects perfectly back to the shielding precepts.
Exactly.
If he teaches it and people slander him because they misunderstand, they generate terrible karma for themselves. So he hides the truth to protect the audience from their own cynicism.
It is another layer of radical empathy. But within this specific dialogue, the truth is laid out bare. The seed to break the self-sabotage is found in 4 specific words directed toward awakened beings, or those who represent ultimate wisdom:
And what are they?
respect, reverence, offering, and obedience. And to be clear, offering has absolutely nothing to do with a material transaction or handing over cash.
So what is the actual mechanism of these 4 words? How do they untie the knots?
They act as a psychological weapon, designed specifically to destroy the root of the knots, which are our bloated egos and our stinginess. Let's look at the first 2. Respect and reverence. What keeps a knot tight?
I would guess the arrogant belief that we already know best.
Exactly. By practicing genuine respect and reverence, you are forcibly humbling your ego. You are admitting, I don't have all the answers, and my current way of thinking is flawed.
You drop the I'm right, they're wrong addiction. And what about offering? If it isn't money, what are we giving?
You are offering your energy, your gratitude, and your willingness to change. We spend our lives constantly trying to consume and take from our environment. Offering forces a perspective shift.
Okay, I see.
You transition from being a consumer, a black hole of desires and grievances, into a giver. You actively water your field of merit instead of poisoning it.
And finally, obedience. I imagine this goes back to the person dying in the desert.
Precisely. Obedience isn't about blind subservience. It is about trusting the guide. It is looking at the high-voltage wire, feeling your lying senses tell you to touch it, and choosing to obey the warning instead of your own arrogant curiosity.
So by bowing down and applying these 4 principles, respect, reverence, offering, and obedience to the people and wisdom that nourish you, you forcibly short-circuit that toxic reward loop in your brain.
That's the mechanism.
You aren't fighting the bad habit directly with willpower. You are fundamentally changing the soil so that good habits can naturally take root.
It breaks the deadlock.
Yeah.
These practices shatter the ego, and in the empty space left behind, the seed of genuine, effortless good habits can finally grow.
Wow, that is quite the journey. I mean, we started out just wondering why it's so hard to wake up early to work out and why it's so easy to doom scroll.
And we ended up in some pretty deep psychological waters.
We really did. Along the way, we discovered our literal drug-like addiction to anger. We realized how we pour herbicide on our own potential through ingratitude. We learned that religious rules are actually acts of profound societal empathy.
A lot of perspective shifts today.
Yeah, and finally, we found that true ego-shattering reverence is the ultimate antidote to our self-sabotaging minds.
If you think back to that terrifying metaphor of the loyal subject, the realization that we willingly serve our own suffering, I want to leave everyone listening with one final thought to apply to their own life.
Please do.
Take a hard look at your daily routines, your anxieties, and your resentments. Who or what are you secretly acting as a loyal subject to? Which painful, dead-end habit or grudge are you loyally feeding your most precious time and emotional energy to?
That is a tough question to ask yourself.
It is. And more importantly, what would happen if you took all of that exact same loyalty and transferred it to the people, the teachings, and the practices that actually nourish your field of merit?
That is something to seriously mull over the next time you find yourself digging a trench you don't want to be in. Thank you all for joining us on this deep dive. Take that question with you, plant your own seed of unpolluted good habits, and as always, stay curious.